Hi, I'm here with Holly Gifford from Big Little Sister, and I'm going to be interviewing her about her show. How does it feel bringing your work to the Edinburgh Fringe with its unique mix of audience and energy?
Oh, it's really interesting bringing work to the Fringe, and I hope I don't immediately get political, but like it's I think with like it's interesting like what demographic you're performing to, because I put on previews in London, but I feel like that's a very specific like group of people, and it's interesting, I mean, who's up here? I mean, my play is all about disability, and actually there are loads of like fantastic organisations in Scotland and like disability like networks, but also Edinburgh itself is fairly not accessible in terms of like even just like getting around, particularly if you're like a wheelchair user. So it's been interesting like bringing it here and finding out like who my crowd is and how it like resonates with people. But I think the audiences that have seen it have been so lovely, and I think I don't know, there's a reason that they all came there. I'm so early, which is kind of hard because it's like who wants to arrive at that time? And actually I think it means that the people that are in my audience have turned up there very specifically because of the subject matter, which has been so nice performing to them.
What inspired the idea for Big Little Sister? Was it just one event or multiple that happened that sparked the idea?
So Big Little Sister is it was like my entire life that inspired it. I was like, it is sort of my life, but I think, I don't know, like growing up with a sibling with like additional needs, like often I found that I was like, oh, I've got loads of really funny stories to tell about this, and I'll be telling people. But then the minute I would start talking about like the more serious issues, I think people's eyes sort of glaze over a bit and they don't really want to talk about it. And I was like, how much of my own story of me and my brother do I just tell for people to like consume for like a lot of like, I don't know, to make them feel better about themselves? And that's why I was like, oh, actually, I wonder what it would be like if I was to tell a really true story of our story and how I would go about telling that truth. And that's sort of what inspired it in the moment that I was like, okay, I want to make this show.
How much of Big Little Sister is drawn from personal perspective versus fictionalized for the stage?
Honestly, I would say like it's all from my perspective. And there's part of the show where I've got on the back wall when it says like all of this is true to my memory. And I think that's important to preface because like I've talked to my mum about it, and a lot of the memories I have aren't necessarily exactly how they happened because they're from like a child's perspective. I think some of it is like, I guess like in terms of the language I use is like dramatized. I think a lot of it is deliberately performative, which is a choice, which you will find out why in the later half of the show. But I think, maybe the language feels performative, but actually all of the memories are true and real stories that happened.
If you could just describe your show in 3 words, what would they be?
There is a review, which I might steal what she said because I have a very kind reviewer that called it, frank, funny, and then I can't remember the other one, so I'm going to come up with one of my own because I do think it's funny, and I do think it's like maybe I'd go with like funny. I want to kind of say like punk, and then like warm, I think. Yeah.
What do you hope people take away from your show?
I think it's like a 50-50 one in the sense that like if you have grown up with a disability or around people with disabilities or work with them, and if that has been your life, then I think I want people to leave feeling seen and feeling like they've had a space where they can like laugh and cry and talk about it without feeling like this barrier. And for people that aren't in that world, and this wasn't deliberate, but I realized whilst doing it, I'm like, I think by trying to be as truthful as I can, you end up being quite accidentally educational to people that are so outside of that world. So I hope that those audiences leave knowing a lot more on that situation than they did before.
I mean, I'm autistic, so I can relate with growing up with a disability, maybe a different type of disability, but
I think the attitudes are the same though. I think it's like, it's just it's how people who are completely outside of that world like interact with you and your family in a way that I hope anyone with any form of disability I think feels seen in it, and there's parts of the show where I've tried to sort of expand it out so it's not just me and my brother, and it's maybe by telling our personal story, maybe it's a comment on the wider society.
Your brother's voice is heard through his communication aid. What impact have you found that has on the audience?
I think it's quite funny in that, like, I've been able to program it so I can make jokes for him to say, and I think, like, for an audience member, it's maybe quite nice in the sense it's not just me talking the entire time, and it's almost like whilst there is one performer on stage, it sort of always feels like maybe there's two in the points where I speak to him. But then also how that resonates with some audiences is that yesterday I did I did a performance for an audience that was for the visually impaired, and it was so funny doing it specifically to that audience because the voice that my brother uses is a very classic text to speech voice, and so all of them know it because it's like the classic screen reader voice, and everyone's going like, I know this voice. So then it was so funny how using his voice landed with them, because as much as I see that as Patrick's voice, that's a lot of people's voices in a weird way that I don't think I'd ever properly thought about.
Yeah. You use surrealist storytelling, sketches and monologues in your show. How did you decide on that combination?
They're what I'm best at. I think it was like I wanted the show to be like entertaining, especially in a way that, like, I think some parts of it are like performative. But I work as like I have worked and do work as a drag performer, and I think part of that was like that sort of like leaning into that side of it. And I love comedy, and there's lots of types of performance I enjoy doing, and I was like, well, if I have full artistic control over this play, then I will utilize all of my favorite things and try and fit them in. But then also I just think for like the sake of variety, again, if it's just one person on stage, what's the most interesting way to tell your story?
How has the audience responded to your show? Is there any feedback that stood out to you?
Yeah, I think I've been quite overwhelmed with the feedback, actually. I hadn't gone to the review section of the Ed Fringe listing where audiences can write their reviews, and I think some people had felt quite seen and moved by it. People saying that it was the best show that they'd seen in years, and that they'd like cried and laughed. And that really meant a lot, because it's hard in a festival like this. Like, half the time it just feels like people are just wanting to get like coverage, which is understandable because you try and bring a show here so it can have a life somewhere else. But to be able to actually really reach the right people, that meant a lot. And then in terms of other feedback, there is someone that came up to me today, which really made me laugh. This is awfully morbid, but she went, "Is he still alive?" Yeah, I was like, oh, yeah, no, he is. But it was just not the question I was expecting.
In terms of you being in Edinburgh so far, what's been your highlight of your trip?
This is sort of unrelated to the show, but no, a little bit. So basically, I am dressed up as my dad in drag in the show, and so I have this lace front beard that I bought. And I brought it with me because when I was doing a touch tour, I wanted visually impaired audiences to be able to feel it, to get a sense of it. But because I had it on me, my friend was doing like a late night comedy gig, and he asked me and a couple of others if we wanted to like form like a joke sketch troupe to like take over the night. And then they had me in the beard as this character called like Grandpa Gherkin, and I was hidden in the audience until they said one special phrase, which then meant I would yell from the audience and go, "Hot dog, boys!" and then like climb on stage. And that was really fun. I think like Fringe is amazing for like how quickly you can try out silly ideas like that. Like the fact that we were like, I think we joked about it in a coffee shop after my show, and then the next day we were performing that idea on stage. And that's a real highlight, is like maybe like the creative freedom that you get in Edinburgh, which I think maybe you don't get elsewhere, is the way to be able to quickly platform and try out new ideas like that.
Thank you for your time, and go see Big Little Sister at the Edinburgh Fringe, the Zoo Playhouse now.